Hey, anatomy students, welcome to the second video in the series on the cardiovascular system. Today we're going to talk about the chambers and where they are and what we call them, and the valves that separate them. Should be a short one. I think it's not much more than about 11 minutes. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, everybody, welcome to video lesson 2. Today we're going to talk about the chambers and the valves inside. So let's go ahead and get this educational ball rolling. The right atrium receives blood from all parts of the body. This is going to be oxygen poor blood, and it is going to get, it's coming from all parts of the body where the blood, clearly, since it's oxygen poor blood, it will have been used up by all the tissues out in the body. The blood is received from 3 major veins. It's going to come back through, will be the superior vena cava, which is this blood vessel here. Superior because, of course, it is above. It's higher than the heart. And will also come from the inferior vena cava. So that's going to be bringing oxygen poor blood from everywhere below the heart. So the organs of digestion, the organ mass or the visceral mass in the abdominopelvic cavity and the lower limbs. And then it comes in from what is called the coronary sinus, and that is going to be coming from the heart muscle itself. So a short journey for those blood cells because they feed the heart muscle, but they're still have dumped off their oxygen and picked up CO2, and they're coming back to the heart via those veins. I'll say this many times, but remember, all veins carry blood back to the heart. All arteries carry blood away. All right. So regardless of oxygen content, all blood that is coming back to the heart will do so through a vein. All blood going away from the heart will do so through an artery. The right atrium sends blood to the right ventricle, and it will pump through, this is the right atrium. It will come through the valve here and go into the right ventricle. The right ventricle will then pump when it contracts, and it will send blood up and out the pulmonary trunk, and the pulmonary trunk will branch into the right and left pulmonary arteries. So there's going to be the left pulmonary artery, and then the right pulmonary artery is going to come that way. Notice it's not our right or left. It is that person. If this was in their chest, it's their right and left. Each of these carries blood to the lungs. So that blood is oxygen poor and is going to the lungs to become oxygenated, as we have just recently talked about in the respiratory system. In the lungs, the blood drops off CO2 and picks up oxygen, O2, which we have talked about in great detail in our last unit. Blood then returns to the heart by 4 pulmonary veins that empty into the left atrium. And remember, as I said earlier, and I will say many, many times, all veins bring blood back to the heart. Now, some people will tell you that all arteries carry oxygen-rich blood and all veins carry oxygen-poor blood. But here in this case, when we're talking about the pulmonaries, that does not hold true. So many times when we talk about those all or none kind of statements, there's always one or two out there that don't qualify. The majority of arteries are going to be carrying oxygen-rich blood, but there are a few that are carrying oxygen poor. And those, again, are the pulmonary, the network of the pulmonary arteries taking blood to the lungs to become oxygenated. So the pulmonary veins are bringing blood, oxygen-rich blood, back to the heart from the lungs, where they have just recently become oxygenated. From there, blood is passed to the left ventricle. So it empties in the four pulmonary veins. It's going to empty here. So the four pulmonary veins are going to empty that oxygen-rich blood here into the left atrium. The left atrium will contract and send blood down here through the bicuspid valve into the left ventricle. And then the left ventricle will contract and send blood up and out the aorta right here. And the aorta is the largest artery in the body. Blood can go anywhere it wants from the aorta. It all depends on where it is headed. It can stay in the aorta and make this turn down this way, and it can head down through the chest, and it would be known as the thoracic aorta. Once it passes through the diaphragm and heads into the abdominal region, it becomes the abdominal aorta and can feed the organs, or it can continue down to the hips and branch in the iliac artery and then go into the leg and now it's in the femoral artery and all the way down to the leg. Or it can go and branch into this large artery here, which is the brachiocephalic, or it can head up here, which is going to be the left carotid artery, or it can branch into this one and head over onto the left shoulder, and that would be the left subclavian. And just so we're clear, this artery is going to branch up here. That's going to be the carotid artery on the right-hand side, and this is going to be the right subclavian as it goes underneath the clavicle, hence the name subclavian. So anyway, that just gives you an idea of how that blood can pretty much go anywhere in the body from the aorta. Every time the cardiac muscle contracts, it sends blood either into a ventricle or out into the body. What stops the blood from flowing backwards? I'm glad you asked. Those structures are known as valves, and there are four key valves in the heart. I mentioned a few on the last slide, but here in this diagram down here, we are looking in the top of the heart. So here we've cut the top of the atria off, and we're seeing the valves that separate the atria from the ventricles. On the right-hand side, we have the tricuspid valve, because you can see it has 1, 2, 3 cusps or flaps. So it's called the tricuspid valve. And then the valve between the left atrium and the left ventricle is known as the bicuspid valve, because it has 1, 2 cusps or flaps. You will also sometimes, and I'm going to pre-apologize for my handwriting, but you will sometimes see this called the mitral valve. That's supposed to be an R, but my computer screen is moving as I write on it. Known as the mitral valve. A lot of times they're used interchangeably. So it's either bicuspid or mitral valve. And again, they're a one-way trapdoor. They let blood go through. In this case, they would be heading downward into the ventricles. And when the ventricles contract, they close, and they don't let blood squirt back up into the atrium or go backwards. So what happens is these valves, which are at the base of the pulmonary trunk and the aorta, these valves will open and allow blood, when the ventricles contract, will allow blood to go up into those main arteries. And then when the ventricle relaxes, they close, and they don't let blood flow backwards back down into the ventricles. And these are known as semilunar valves. The one here at the base of the aorta is the aortic semilunar valve. And the one here at the base of the pulmonary trunk is, you guessed it, known as the pulmonary semilunar valve. The atrioventricular valves, these are the valves that are in between the atria and ventricles, hence their name, are between the, as I just said, between the atrium and ventricles. The right AV valve is the tricuspid, because it has 3 flaps or cusps, as I mentioned on the previous slide. The AV valve, or atrioventricular valve, between the left atrium and left ventricle is known as the bicuspid valve, because it has 2 flaps or cusps. And again, you'll see in some places it will be referred to as the mitral valve. The semilunar valves, both arteries that leave the heart, have a valve that prevents blood from flowing back into the heart. Those are known as the semilunar valves. The one, again, at the base of the pulmonary trunk is called the pulmonary semilunar valve, and the one at the base of the aorta is called the aortic semilunar valve. So here is the base of the pulmonary trunk. We see the pulmonary semilunar valve, and then again here at the base of the aorta would be the aortic semilunar valve. And that is going to be all we need to discuss in video lesson 2. All right, that is going to conclude video lesson 2 on the cardiovascular system, again, covering the chambers of the heart and the valves. So, as always, if you have any questions, shoot me an email, and I'll try to answer it as promptly and efficiently as I can. If we are quarantined and we're on remote, head on over to Schoology and look for that exit slip. But if you're watching this at home, then you will not have an exit slip. And as always, this is to keep you up to date on what we are covering in class while you're gone. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Click like and subscribe. Talk to you later.